Well, the death of George Floyd took place 3 years ago, folks, in the city of Minneapolis. And the person who was in charge of DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion there, says the city simply is ignoring the reality of racism there. Tyeastia Green, the former director of Minneapolis' Division of Race, Equity, and Inclusion and Belonging for the city of Minneapolis, says city officials there lack the commitment to address systemic racism under Minneapolis City Operations Officer Heather Johnston. Now, Green was hired in 2022, just 20 minutes before a news conference about Amir Locke, the black man who was killed by police attempting to serve a no-knock warrant. In a scathing 14-page memo, she highlighted the challenges she faced in her role and how her recommendations were repeatedly ignored, intentionally misguided on assignments, and had false claimants filed against her. She also called out two black council members, Latrisha, Vetaw, and Andrea Jenkins, for lying about their lack of work and engaging in anti-black racism. Tyeastia Green joins us right now on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Ms. Green, glad to have you here on the show. And so when you talk about the lack of commitment, look, we've been very critical here about all of these corporations and cities and others not being serious about the diversity, equity, and inclusion. How long did it take for you to discover that clearly Minneapolis, in your estimation, was not serious about DEI?
I think it only took the first day, Roland. The first day that I was on the job, they sent me to my office, which was windowless and mouse infested. So the first day I knew that they weren't serious about racial justice. The first month was when the MDHR findings came out, the Minnesota Department of Human Rights findings. And then after that was the same day was the CCO demand letter from the employees saying, hey, Minneapolis, y'all are racist towards black employees. And there were like 60 employees that went to the confirmation hearing of Heather Johnston to explain to city council that she was in fact racist towards them. So it didn't take long at all.
So what was interesting to me in terms of what you just laid out there, when you wrote this memo, what was the reaction? What did they say? Was there a meeting? Did they say, hey, let's address your concerns?
They didn't respond. I sent that memo on March 6th. And on March 13th, I got a call from Heather Johnston, my direct supervisor, saying that I would have to be unappointed or I would have to resign. I didn't hear from anyone that I sent that memo to. I sent it to.
I'm sorry. What does unappointed means?
The position that I held in Minneapolis was an appointed position, so it's a city official position, and it's appointed by Mayor Frey.
Okay, so were they saying, hey, either you resign or we're going to fire you?
Yes, that's exactly what they were saying. Either you resign or we're going to fire you. Exactly a week after I sent that.
And which option did you take?
I took the option to let my resignation of February 21st stand. So February 21st, I did resign my position, citing the racism and toxic work environment and the sabotage of the Black Expo that I put on. I was asked to reconsider that resignation. And about 6 hours after discussions with the city of Minneapolis officials, I rescinded that resignation. So when they called me on March 13th, they said, you can let your resignation stand from February 21st, or we have to fire you.
You were very critical of the two black council members. So explain that.
Well, Roland, all skin folk ain't kinfolk. And that is the situation that's happening in Minneapolis with Council President Jenkins and Councilmember Vetaw. Councilmember Vetaw, excuse me, has been going around the city, in the community, defaming my character with black groups in the community in regards to this all-black expo that I was trying to put on for the city. The very first one in 2023 for Black History Month. Minneapolis has never done anything for Black History Month for the black community. And the first one that we do, Latrisha Vetaw is out there discrediting the event, saying that I owned, the event planning company, that I paid myself $242,000, that I'm stealing money from the city. She started all of those lies within the community and within my workplace.
What happens now?
I'm going to live my life, Roland, but I'm going to make sure that the city of Minneapolis is held accountable for their toxicity and the racism in their enterprise.
Do you believe that, I mean, this was, again, ground zero for so many people out here emphasizing and talking about DEI. Do you believe that this is this is indicative of the cities and corporations who we're already seeing some 36% of DEI jobs have been cut across the country? So it seems that a lot of people just 3 years after the fact are pulling back on all of those big pronouncements they made after the death of George Floyd.
Absolutely. There is definitely a backlash happening right now. You know how the pendulum swings when there's something racial justice, we get something, and then the pendulum swings so far back that we're right back to where we were, or worse than where we were before we started. And so that's definitely happening around the country, where people are taking back their commitment towards racial justice after the murder of George Floyd. And Minneapolis is no different. And with the leadership of Heather Johnston and Mayor Frey, I fear that Minneapolis will be worse off in racial justice than it was before George Floyd was even murdered.
So we reached out to the city of Minneapolis, and this is what they sent us with regards to the allegations of Tyeastia Green. The city disagrees with the characterization of the events outlined in the memo you shared in the news article. Many city staff worked tirelessly to make this expo a success, and it's disappointing to see them publicly criticized for their hard work on behalf of Minneapolis and its residents. The city is deeply aware of the toll structural racism takes on our residents, businesses, and workforce. The mayor and city council took steps to advance racial equity during the 2022 budget cycle by elevating the former division into the Racial Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Department. In doing so, the city enhanced the influence and stature of this work in the city enterprise. The city backed up its department creation by investing nearly $800,000 more than for the 2023 budget than the prior year in increasing staffing capacity. Over the last several years, city leadership has also worked to build a more inclusive workplace and embed equity in policy and practice. Just this year, the mayor allocated significant funding to develop anti-racist training curricula, and the city has already partnered with third-party experts to deliver anti-racist training sessions to city leadership. The city has also reformed its procurement processes in the last year to prioritize local vendors within the target market program. We have taken and will continue taking concrete steps to support the Black community, especially when planning large-scale community events. The city auditor is undertaking a review of procurement processes underpinning the production of major events. As stewards of public funds, it's important the city follow processes that ensure public funds have public benefit, even if those processes can be complex. Ms. Green's memo is under review, and professional staff will determine whether further investigation is required. The city has a process for assessing and investigating allegations of discrimination and harassment, and is an equal opportunity employer that prohibits discrimination and harassment of any kind. All employment decisions are based on merit, performance, competence, qualifications, job requirements, and departmental need without regard to race, color, sex, including pregnancy or gender identity, religion or belief, national origin, sexual orientation, marital or parental status, disability, age, political affiliation, membership in an employee organization, military service, genetic information, or any other legally protected status or characteristic. Ms. Green, how would you respond to that statement put out by the city of Minneapolis to your memo?
I think it's funny that they are taking credit for the work that I put in. And I also think it's funny that they're claiming that they increased my budget by $800,000 when most of my projects on my staff are multi-million-dollar projects. So $800,000 they know will not cover anything that I'm doing within the racial equity realm. The other thing, though, there was another thing that you said about them elevating my division to a department. When I was working at the city of Burlington and they offered me this position 20 minutes before the Amir Locke presentation or press conference, I put in my counteroffer that this position had to be a department head. I had to be the leader of an actual department. That was already solidified before I even got on the plane to come back home to Minneapolis. So I just think it's funny that they're putting in that information into their response.
What is next for you?
Roland, I plan to hold the city accountable I put this memo out as the leader of that department, as the expert in this city, to say what we are doing as an enterprise is wrong. And there are several examples of why it's wrong and how it's wrong. So I'm calling on Jacob Fry, I'm calling on Heather Johnston to do something, even though I called those people out within the memo. I attached the HR director. Hey, I need you to investigate this. So the investigations that they're talking about that's happening right now, I called for those a week before they fired me. So I feel like I'm still going to hold them accountable for what they're doing. Minneapolis is a big machine. It's a big beast. And they're using their political and economic power to try to destroy me and try to silence me. But they won't. They will not. I will speak out about this. I will tell the world what they're doing in Minneapolis, the home of the murder of George Floyd, and how they continue to perpetuate not only systemic racism, but outright blatant racism every single day for the Black employees inside of that enterprise.
All right, folks, back to our Roland Unfiltered video in just one moment.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Your money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.